Welcome to episode number 4. Thank you guys for joining. Congratulations to all those that have made it through the whole month of November. Today is officially the 4th episode with Alberto Salas. And before anything, I want to thank you guys for all the support and all the love that you've shown the show thus far. I hope you guys have really enjoyed what you guys have seen and heard thus far. And I guarantee it, like I have been the last couple of weeks, many more episodes are coming your way. Today I sit down with Alberto Salas, a Grammy Award-winning producer, arranger, keyboardist, and percussionist. Alberto has shared the stage with Santana, Maná, Los Lobos, B.B. Winans, Poncho Sanchez, Israel, Cachao Lopez, Raúl Malo, Rick Trevino, Los Super 7, Andrae Crouch, the Luckman Jazz Orchestra, the Nashville Chamber Orchestra, Christina Aguilera, the City of Angels Orchestra, Vicky Carr, Andy Garcia, and the Unison All-Stars, Darius, Luis Conte, and many more. Alberto has recorded on Carlos Santana's multi-Grammy-winning album, Supernatural, and laid down the groove for that album's Grammy-winning song and record of the year, Corazón Espinado. Today we sit down and we discuss much of Cuban music's history and its influence on American pop culture. Alberto is one of the few individuals that I know that teaches Cuban music history at a high level and really starts to identify when its music came to be popular here in the States. He's one of my favorite keyboard players when it comes to Latin music. This guy is amazing. One of the strongest montunos you ever hear in your life, all while keeping the clave on his left foot. So I hope you guys will enjoy the show. Today is episode number 4. Thank you guys for joining, and here you go. What's up, guys? This is Sir Kevin Says, episode number 4. I'm here with Alberto Salas, producer, keyboardist, percussionist, arranger, bishop.
Interpretive dancer.
Interpretive dancer. And one more. I'm missing one more.
Now you caught me off guard.
Apostle.
Which is rare. Most reverend.
Post-reverend.
Most reverend.
Well, most reverend. I was post-reverend. Like, what?
Post-reverend. No. But, no.
Alberto, thanks for being here, man.
My pleasure, man.
How you doing, brother?
Doing good, bro.
Yeah?
Doing good, Taking it day by day and doing well.
Yeah?
Still here.
Good to be good. I mean, I'm excited that you're here, man. I know it's been a long time coming. I think we've been trying to set it up for a while now, but you get busy. I get out of
You
town.
get busy. It's like, so, yeah. But,
Thanks. Yeah. I'm excited that you're here, man. I've known you for I'd say 6 or 7 years now. Our first time meeting was at the NAMM show.
NAMM show.
2009.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes,
and
sir.
I remember it was through a GB5 record that I came to know about you at first, and then I knew everything else that you've done. And
I thought you saw me on America's Most Wanted or on in the post office walls. Okay, GB5.
Yeah.
Okay, now I got it. Yeah. Okay.
So I remember I approached you and I was like, because I saw your name tag right on your badge, and I was like, man, that's Alberto Salas. I know this guy, like he plays these bad montunos, and and so I approached you and I was like, hey man, I'm a huge fan. I listened to you on GB5, and I actually knew about you also through. Carlos Santana's record Supernatural, where you did Corazón Espinado, which I know from to this date, not everybody plays the montuno right. Is that correct?
It's one of the most simple montunos, but yeah, I sometimes go on YouTube and see different versions and stuff, and I'm like, wow. I mean, what are people listening to? I mean, are they listening to the same version I recorded? But it's like, so I'm thinking of doing a YouTube Corazón Espinado piano official.
You should,
okay,
man. You should, and you should just keep it up there. And if anybody hits you up from the label, just tell them I'm the one that
Yeah. No, it would be a tutorial, so
Yeah.
I don't think I'll have any problems.
Yeah, that's cool.
But you're being kind of modest and stuff. The way we first met, if the way I recall it, it was at you have your details correct. It was at the NAMM show, 2009, and usually where all the Latinos would hang out is the Latin percussion booth.
Yeah.
So that's always the first go-to spot.
Yep.
Let's see who we see, handshake, people we see once a year. And I heard us right next to the LP booth, a very nice, authentic drum groove.
Oh, that's right.
And then I went to go see who was playing. And that's when I saw you playing. I go, look, wow. I'm about keeping the tradition alive and teaching the youth the traditions of Cuban, Caribbean, Latin American music and stuff. So I was very impressed, saw how young you were. I mean, right now you look 12 years old. Back then you looked 6. And it was very nice. And then I guess when I got a little closer, you saw my name badge, and then that's when we started talking.
We started connecting, right?
Yeah.
And I think you did compliment like I think I was playing like a songo rhythm, right? I was playing songo, something like that.
Something like that, or it was I don't remember exactly what, but it was the groove, which to me is
everything.
Everything. Yeah. And was very nice. It was either that or a combination of a songo with a 6/8, but with your Peruvian background and your rhythms. I mean, that explains a lot as to why it sounded, so good. But I didn't compliment your music. I think it was your sneakers or something. I said, that's a nice Jordans.
Right now, I got some Pumas on. They need to be clean. But well, Alberto, tell us a little bit about your story, man. Like, where you were born, your musical upbringing.
I was born. I'm one of the rare native Angelinos. I know you may be shocked, but yes, I was born in Los Angeles. Grew up in South Central Los Angeles on 54th Street between Hoover and Vermont. I was born in '68, and the '70s at that time, it was tough growing up in that neighborhood. There was a lot of tension between the races, even back then. Yeah. So when I was grew up in a musical household, but not my parents were musicians.
Okay.
My mother loved music. She was from Guantanamo, Cuba, and my father was from Costa Rica, San Jose, and he every Friday would go buy music. Back then it was LPs, the long plays. And every day, sometimes before he would go to work, he worked the night shift, or definitely every Saturday, there was music in my house.
Yeah.
And he would put in all the Cuban classics. At that time, I didn't like it, all of my family from Cuba came in 1970, and that includes one of my cousins and my aunts, who at that time were teenagers. Mm-hmm. So they started listening to all the American music at the time, like, sugar, they would play that on the 45s, and I was like, or Elvis. Yeah. So Elvis is really the first music that I recall hearing. And so being that, I wanted to be cool too, like my older cousins, let's listen to the American music. And I would always tell my Dad, take your music off. And he would tell me, hey, when you have your own house, you can put whatever you want. But this is my house, and we're going to listen. So the seed was being planted.
Yeah.
He would put all the classics like Benny Moré, Orquesta Aragón, Conjunto Casino, Los Guaracheros de Oriente. I mean, we would listen to that, and my house was party central for the family. Yeah. Either Thanksgiving or New Year's or all the holidays, or just to get together.
Right.
And my dad was a DJ, so he would put all his classics, and the family would dance or whatever. But as we grew older, when I was like 6 years old, the neighborhood started getting worse as the years progressed. And in order to keep us off of the streets, my dad, at that time from Sears, bought a little organ. It's one of those organs that has like maybe 3 octaves, and then you would press buttons with your left hand to give you a chord. Real cheesy sound and stuff. So they bought it for my older brother to see if he was interested.
Yeah.
And I at that time I was like 5 years old, and I guess even back then, even though I was 5, I got a little jealous that they were giving him the attention and stuff. So along with the organ, they bought a Charlie Brown big note songbook. And one day when my mom went to work, I go, I'm going to learn, and I'm going to show her that I can do this too. So I saw Silent Night, and I used to look at Peanuts all the time, on TV growing up as a kid. So I opened it up to Silent Night. I go, I'm going to learn this. So I learned how to play the melody with my right hand, and then the chords with the buttons on my left. And then when she got home from work, I go, Mom, sit down. I want to show you something. And then, so then she goes, okay, what? And she thought I was just going to be banging or whatever. So I played it note for note. And then she was like, oh my God, my son. Started like, no problem, Mom, whatever. She goes, do you want to study piano? And I go, yes. So they didn't know anything about, music or music teachers or whatever. So they're just asking referrals. The neighborhood piano teacher at that time was a lady by the name of Miss Randolph.
Okay.
And Miss Randolph was maybe about 236 years old at that time. And no, when I got to her, she was probably in her 80s already. And so I started taking piano lessons, and 2 months into it, I hit a wrong note, and she got a yardstick and hit me on the hand. Pop!
Wow. What year was this?
I was 6. I was 6 years old, so this was like 74, 1974. So I didn't cry, but a tear, and I was like, and my mom was sitting right there. As soon as we left the house, I go, Mom, I never want to play the piano again, and I quit. I quit the piano. I quit piano lessons and stuff. I understand that kind of discipline now that I'm a music teacher or whatever. I don't do that, but from the old school mentality. But it's a fine line.
Yeah.
Because it caused me to quit for almost 10 years.
Wow.
So at that time, in order to keep us off of the streets, as the neighborhood got worse and worse, 1976 came, 1977, and I asked my dad, still Sears, a drum set. They had the company was named Royce.
Wow.
I still have my snare stand and some of the parts of the drum set 50 years later or 40 plus years later. But so he, in order to keep us off of the streets, bought the drum set, set it up in the living room, and that started coming naturally to me, drums and percussion. And the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack came in, Staying Alive. So I would, and I would play the whole soundtrack and learn and hear the beats, and that's how I learned how to play drums. And then my mom, once again, she saw that I had an affinity for drums and percussion, so let me see what I can do to find a drum teacher. So then the neighborhood community center, there was a gentleman by the name of Joe Peters, jazz drummer, older African-American gentleman, jazz guy. I mean, now I remember. I couldn't appreciate it back then because I was far from jazz or whatever. But he would play, and I would remember his ride and his double stroke rolls, and it's like, wow. And he goes, so you want to play drums? I go, yeah, but I want to play this. And I brought my Kiss records. And Peter Criss, and there was a turntable there, and at that time I started listening to Kiss and Saturday Night Fever, and then he listened to it, and I can remember the expression on his face. Oh, okay, yeah, we can learn that. So he goes, okay, let me teach you, before we learn this, let me teach you the basic rock beat. Let me teach you the old school ways. So he started boom, 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 and then I go, okay, yeah, we're getting closer. Yeah. Not ching, 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 no. Give me the ching, ching. So then he would teach rudiments, but at that time I wasn't, not that I'm much better now, but at that time I really wasn't disciplined and focused to learn. So I would kind of like call him up, and then he started making house calls. Yeah. And my very first, he used to work at Pro Drum Shop for a while, and he got me my first drum book, which is Roy Burns, Rudiments, and a bass drum book, and a practice pad, and the sticks, and he would teach me how to do it. But then, I wasn't disciplined enough I was, 6, 7? And I would call him and make excuses. I can't do the lesson today because I'm working on the house, or this, or whatever. And it went weeks after that. So then I quit drums and just picked it up on myself.
Yeah.
And as time progressed, the neighborhood's still getting worse. So when we first, in the early 70s, it was, nice. Then mid 70s to late 70s, guns started coming in. So my parents says, "Oh, we got to move. We got to move." So that's when we moved to Southgate. And when we moved to Southgate, we met another teenage boy who his dad had a band. And then say, "Oh, we should start a band." You know, we're all teenagers. My older brother was 2 years older, and
Yeah.
this boy, they were the same age, and I was younger, but but he was a drummer, and I wanted to be a drummer. By that time, I was already listening to Zeppelin and Bonham and Neil Peart and Rush, and I was playing all that stuff, and that's what I wanted to be, was a drummer. But he was a drummer, and he had more experience than me,
Yeah.
so he was a better drummer. And because of my 2 months of piano lessons, I would sometimes tinkle. The piano was at the house,
Sure.
an out of tune piano, which was never tuned. It sounded like a country saloon. But I would sometimes tinkle and experiment in between the age of 6 when I quit and 14, which is 13, 14 when I moved to Southgate. So then, because I knew 2.3 chords on the piano, they moved me over to keyboard, and the rest is history. I mean, that's where I stayed.
Yeah.
So at 14, his dad used to listen to a lot of Tito Rodriguez, the bands from New York of the 50s, the 40s, and I would go to the rehearsals and stuff and listen to that. But that's when he says, "Well, let's start playing some of this music." So he gave me an album by a Puerto Rican Filipino singer named Joe Batan, and it was an album called Saint Massacre's Day. I forgot something Massacres, whatever. But and that's when I started imitating, trying to play the montunos and the Cuban rhythms.
Yeah,
And I still remember how I played. Horrible. I mean, everything in root position, both hands, and my rhythm was ching 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 ching
Typical,
ching.
yeah.
I mean, very. But that was my start into assimilating what I had grown up hearing my entire life
Right.
through my father.
Yeah.
Now let me try to actually do it, because that's when I started to embrace the music. I'm starting to like it now. So my advice to everybody, even traditions, even though the younger generation may not like it, the seed is planted somehow, and they'll return to it.
That's good.
And that's what happened to me. So I started at that time. There was a radio show. The jazz station at that time is KKGO 105.1, which is now, I believe, a classical station, or it was a classical station. But at that time, it was the jazz station, and then it moved to 88.1. There was a gentleman by the name of Enrique Quique Soto. He used to have an amazing Latin jazz program. And I would listen every Sunday night. I would stay up late and go to bed late and wake up tired Monday to go to school, but I would listen to his show. And he, exposed me to everything. By this time now, I was a freshman in high school. And then on his show, I heard a gentleman by the name of Poncho Sanchez. His first record on Concord label, which is now his big. He had 2 previous solo albums before that, but they were on smaller labels.
Right.
Now this is Concord, which really gave him exposure.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing the song Night in Tunisia. And I was like, and then I would like to read the newspaper at the time. And I saw in the calendar section, Poncho was going to be at a place called the Jazz Safari in Long Beach. So my parents knew that I was a good kid.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't see any vices in me, and and my vocabulary, and no drinking, and no friends. My thing was, even though when my brothers were in high school and they would go out and go to the school dances and go out with friends, my thing was Saturdays with my dad's records or cassettes at that time. I don't know if you know what that is, but and just be there Saturday with headphones or listening and rewind and imitating. So that was my life. That's how I learned. And stuff just by, a school of sink or swim
Yeah.
and stuff. So I saw that he was going to play, so I called the place. And I go, listen, are you guys 21 and over? They go, no. Oh, man. So I got a friend of mine who was already in college. It was a youth group I used to belong to, and this was an older guy. He had a car. Hey, man, I want to go. Can you take me? My parents aren't going to take me, but can you take me? Yeah, let's go. So I remember I got there early so I can sit behind the piano player. And before they even opened, I was just there waiting. And as soon as they opened, sat right behind the piano player. And I would look at nothing but him the entire night, see his hands. Oh, okay. Oh, that's how they get that sound. Oh, because I was still doing jing, 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 and didn't know the correct voicings.
Yeah.
But when I would get home, like about 2:30, I would go straight to the garage so I wouldn't forget. And,
Work it out.
imitate what I
Yeah.
saw. If I could see it, I could do it.
Wow. So you're like a visual.
More visual than, more visual than anything.
Okay.
So that's how I started to get on the right track. That piano player was named Charlie Otwell, one of my biggest influences to this day, and in my humble opinion, one of the best Latin jazz piano players ever. I mean, so tasty, amazing. I mean, just a good student of the music, and so that's how I started to get into the montunos and the actual correct way of interpreting Cuban music on the piano when I was 14. Yeah.
Dang. I for some reason I thought like you had embraced Cuban music since you were a young boy and like percussion and drums.
No, drums and classic rock at that. Zeppelin, Bonham was my guy. And being raised in South Central, we also were immersed with Rick James and Parliament.
Yeah.
And so all of that stuff, the American, the funk, and the classic rock, which I picked up by just, scanning through the radio, through the FM radio and stuff that I liked. Oh, I like this beat and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
As far as because Jimmy Brownlee, another great drummer from Cuba, he told me this when I was studying under him. He said that a lot of American music is influenced by Cuban music. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. I mean, let me see what they taught you over there at school, man. If you know what kind of music were the, like, let's say the 30s, not take it back too far, but the 30s, early 40s. What music were the grandparents, their kids, their grandkids dancing to at that time? It was like swing.
Right, jazz.
They're a particular big band, Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey.
Right.
So there wasn't a musical divide as we have now.
Yeah.
So in 1930, there was a Cuban band leader by the name of Don Aspiazu who came with his band, and they had a hit with a classic song. It's probably one of the most re-recorded Cuban songs called El Manicero.
Okay.
That happened in 1930 in New York. And from there, that was like the first international Cuban exposure outside of Cuba and Latin America. So America started embracing the Cuban rhythms, and so did Hollywood. If you see a lot of the movies from that era, they'll have the token Cuban drummer and the mambo shirts, or the bananas on the head, or whatever, very stereotypical stuff as a novelty. But as those rhythms grew in popularity, the big bands started incorporating, 1, 2, 3 different, at that time the rhythms. Nowadays people know it as salsa. That's a commercial term, like Tito used to say that's what you put on your food. Back then
He refers to it as mambo, right?
These rhythms have their specific names.
Sure.
There's son, danzón, guajira. Cha-cha-cha, guajira, son, mambo. Every different rhythm has its specific name. So these swing bands would incorporate cha-cha-chas and mambos into their repertoire. And this is the music that the junior high kid level, the high school, in their proms would dance and stuff, up until about 1954. So what happened in 1954? 53, 54, and really 55, as it started rock and roll. There caused the music divide.
Wow.
Now the kids rebel and we want to listen to this. You can keep your,
Yep.
you know. So, but if you listen to the beginnings of rock and roll, I'll show you right now.
Yeah.
Oh man, I can. The one of the most basic elements of Cuban music, if not the most basic, is a rhythmic pattern called the clave.
Right.
And our music is binary. It's based on the clave, and the clave is basically a rhythm that ba 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 all Cuban music, popular Cuban music, is based on that rhythm. That's from the singer's phrasing to what the instrumentalists are playing, whether it be percussion, bass, piano, horns, strings,
Yeah.
whatever. It's based on that rhythm, and that rhythm dictates how you're going to play your instrument, the phrasing of your instrument. So that particular rhythm really came into play. Oh, I'm sorry.
Advertisement.
Advertisement. Yeah.
Gotta love YouTube now, huh?
Yeah. But that particular rhythm was there at the advent of popular Western music in the creation of jazz. If we want to go a little further, with the trading between New Orleans and Havana.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have the slaves who would disembark the ship or unload the goods that were in the ship, and then when they would stay, they would go to Congo Square and with their drums, and then the jazz musicians would hear all this and be influenced, and vice versa. So even from jazz, the Cuban music was there from the beginning.
Wow.
You have one of the first jazz superstars, a piano player by the name of Jelly Roll Morton, who he used to call it the Spanish tinge. What he really meant was the Cuban clave, Cuban rhythm influence in the music. But going up almost 50 years, at the advent of rock and roll, I mean, there's a style called doo-wop. Do you know what that is?
Do up.
It's an early rock and roll vocal style,
Yeah.
harmonies and stuff. They used to use it also in swing as well.
Right.
But now they're adding, backbeats to the rhythms and stuff. Now, one of the early hits, I don't know if you've ever heard this song before. Let me know if you have. But what starts it off?
Wow.
Now, is this Cuban music? No. But you can definitely hear the influence.
Yeah, for sure.
Even in the phrasing of the background vocals. Hear the background vocals. Clave influence.
Man.
And from there, we can go to, I teach a class at this
Yeah.
on MI, and the students are like, we go through decades, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, up to today, and you can definitely hear the influence that Cuban rhythms have had on Western popular music. And from there, in the 50s, there was a gentleman by the name of Bo Diddley, and he used to do a song, and the guitar rhythm was the he called it the Bo Diddley beat. Now everybody who knows Cuban music or who comes from that background, but he said he invented it, whatever.
Yeah.
So, like the word said, there's nothing new under the sun. If you look and dig deep enough or look, you'll find, that there's nothing new under the sun, like the word says.
In that recording, what instrument were they using to start off the song? Because it's not a jam block.
No, it's a cowbell. It's a cowbell. Even, Cuban instrument that's used in Cuban music is a cowbell, a high-pitched cowbell.
Yeah.
So they wanted to make it a little, with the castanet kind of stuff, but it's a cowbell. So in the advent, in the beginning of what used to be called rock and roll, which now is called rock, we have the big influence of Cuban rhythms in it.
Yeah.
And still to this day, George Michael, Faith. The guitar. Now, if George Michael, may he rest in peace, but if you were to ask him, man, that's a cool clave, pat on the guitar, he'd probably go, what? Huh? What? He'll probably say, no, that's the Bo Diddley beat. I'm like, yeah. but Elvis songs, uh, the beginnings of punk rock. I want candy.
That's funny.
And you
Yeah.
listen to Mr. Brownstone from Guns N' Roses. Even the drum is going boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba.
Yeah.
So even to this day, the clav is ever present in popular Western music and
for
stuff,
sure.
whether you recognize it or not.
Right. Do you find that most people, you think it's patriotic thing? Like most people don't want to embrace it. Like people, that, Americans that were born here, and you tell them, that there's Cuban music influence in American music. When you tell people that are like advocates for American music, you find that they try and refute and say, no, it's not. That's not the case.
Well, one of my biggest pet peeves is when they call my favorite music now, as we started off in the interview, say I didn't embrace my family's, my heritage music until I was about 14.
Right.
And my biggest pet peeve, and I've heard this from producers tell me directly, and where people, what you do is a novelty. And I'm like, man, if you only knew the history and knew that, these, rhythms that are the latest and greatest, what helped create those rhythms. I mean, there's a set of instruments that's called the bata drums. They're like a 3-hourglass shaped drums. Those are from Africa. But what kept the tradition alive were the percussionists and the bataleros in Cuba. Now a lot of the African instrumentalists go to Cuba to study it because they lost the tradition in the homeland.
Wow.
It was kept alive and flourished in Cuba. Now, some of these rhythms are about 500 years old. The biggest drum is called iya, one of the rhythms from 500 years old. Boom, boom, ba, go back, boom, ba, 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 go back, boom, ba, 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 ba. Now, is that rock?
Yeah.
Is that you put a swing on it?
Yeah.
I mean, is that hip hop? No, that's 500 years old. Like I said, if you dig deep enough and really do the research, the mother of all rhythms, the country's Africa.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, of course.
And stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm all about truth, just looking for truth in anything, and it's not a thing of Cuban pride or American pride or Peruvian pride or whatever. It's just truth. God has given every nationality, every country something beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
And what creates that style and how to play it authentically is not only music, it's what you experience in that location, the way of thinking, the things that happen only in that part of Mexico or in Brazil or in Cuba. I mean, it's my opinion that and it's once again, it's not like we're the best, and no, but they created this. No one's ever going to play Brazilian music better than the Brazilians.
Yep.
No one's ever going to play Mexican better than the Mexican, or Central America or Peruvian music better than the Peruvians. I mean, and that's nothing to be, looked down upon. That's something to be, wow, what a beautiful thing.
Exactly.
We all have our beautiful things and stuff, and we all do it well, man. Just embrace everybody. I like that. Check this out from my country. Oh, yeah. I mean, that was the creation of Latin jazz. I mean, in the late 30s, there was a gentleman by the name of Mario Bauza, and he was playing with all the, Chick Webb and all the big bands of the time, jazz bands. I mean, he was an Afro-Cuban, dark-complected, black skin, but Cuban, and he studied jazz and stuff. And when he would, get together with the other jazz musicians, and the records of his homeland would come from Cuba, he would play for them. John, check this out. And they would insult him and say, man, that's bumpkin music. That's country bumpkin music. And he would get offended. And that's what encouraged him to say, you know what? One of these days, and I want not too far, I'm going to put a band together, and we're going to kick your guys' butt. Wow. And that's exactly what happened. He called his brother-in-law, Machito, get down here. We're going to put a band together, and we're going to play jazz just as good as these guys. Plus, we're going to play Cuban music and anything else better than them. And that's exactly what happened. So because of a negative thing of a put down or whatever, that kind of encouraged him to start the Machito Orchestra, and the birth of Latin jazz came from there. It was originally called Cubop, Cuban and bebop, Cubop, but now it's called Latin jazz. But out of a negative or a bad feeling situation, something positive can come.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not about. But I do, to answer your question, to make a long story even longer. Yeah, I've had people,
You can count on us.
call my stuff that it's a novelty, and it's like, I'm like, whatever. It's like I just keep. Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
I love everything. I love everything as long as it's done well
Right.
and stuff. I mean,
It's true to what it is. And
yeah, there's some people who don't like a certain aspects of Mexican music, like banda. I've actually been on stage where man, they're playing right behind me, and it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
that is wow. That takes some discipline, some practice, and
Right.
some know-how, and it's not just. So yeah, or good norteñas on the accordion and on the bajo sexto, and the way they phrase their vocal and the drumming on that. It's like if it's done well, it's
Sounds-
cool.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
So let's talk. Let's fast forward. You're 15, 16 or so when you get into starting to play piano again, right? About that time. You
I
said?
started playing 14.
14.
At
Okay,
14, when we moved to Southgate, and then because there were two drummers, me and the other guy, and the
Yeah,
other guy was
that's right.
a little bit better, I moved over to piano. So that's when I started to do keyboards again.
Again?
Yeah.
How soon after that? What was your first gig? Your first big gig that you're like, okay, this is a start of like something.
Well, I bypassed a whole era when we were still in South Central. My parents rented. There was a back house, and my parents rented the back house to a musician. He was a guitar player, and he also played a little bit of bass, and he was a huge Santana fan. So I would hear Santana blasting from his, all the Abraxas album and that era Santana, very early Santana. So I would go to his door and just pop in the screen and watch him practice. And then one time he invited me to come in. Hey, come in. So I'm watching him trying to learn the Santana songs. He was a very good guitar player, and he also played bass. And on his table, I would imitate the conga drums, even though I didn't, know really what they were. But I would dance and play. He goes, man, you play like his knowledge of that drum was, Cuban, Puerto Rican. He goes, you play like a Puerto Rican or Cuban. Okay. And so he saw that I had an affinity for music. And he would, two doors down, there was a local band, Mexican band, that they would do the quinceañeras and the weddings, and they would play the norteñas. And so he said, hey, man, he asked my mom for permission if I can go to the rehearsal. So, yeah, they were all like 35, 40, and I was, 7, 8, 6 still. And so I would sit behind and look. Like I said, if I could see it, I could do it. So I would sit behind the keyboard player, and when they would take a break, I would just, go and imitate. And he goes, wow, can you play that? I go, yeah. So he's like, okay, let's play it again. Now with me on it. And he goes, man. And then when the drummer was having a hard time, I would go, let me. So I would show him and stuff. And then I started learning bass by watching. And then the guy would teach me a little, the 1 and the 5 and then the patterns. So they go, man. They asked my parents' permission if I could play with the band. There'd be their like little gimmick, the little 6-year-old. Unfortunately, there were no video cameras back then and stuff. There's some pictures of me. I had to jump up to hit the cymbals and stuff. I was too small. When I was a kid, I was small, really small. But that was my first gig. So they would give me like $20 a gig.
That's funny.
And stuff. And my parents would go, obviously.
Yeah.
But we would do weddings, house parties, quinceañeras, and we would play norteñas. And they would rotate me from keyboards. It was an organ. It wasn't a piano. It was an organ. To drums, to bass. And I would rotate those 3 chairs. So that was my first live music experience when I was 6.
Man. So a young boy. You're really...
Yeah, really young. Really young.
And then fast forward now, because you've worked with so many artists, Christina Aguilera, Carlos Santana, when did you land your first gig, and what instrument was it on? Because I know you do percussion and keys, so.
Well, playing with my first professional band.
Professional,
So
sorry,
I
yeah.
did it. So, as I said, I started going to see Poncho Sanchez when I was 14. And then at one time, I went to go see him after 2 years when I was 16. He would always see my face. I was always in the front row. I would always sit behind Charlie and watch his hands and stuff. So I guess after about a year and a half, 2 years, one time he asked me, "Hey man, are you a musician?" I go, "Yeah." I mean, on the bandstand. And he's like, I'm right there. "You're a musician?" He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "What do you play?" I go, "I play piano." He goes, "What's your name?" I go, Alberto Salas. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest with us tonight, sitting in with us tonight." And I'm like, "No." So he goes, "We got Mr. Alberto Salas who's going to sit in with us." And I was like, "Oh, my God."
Oh, man.
So Charlie moves over, and I sit down. And this is the only harmony lesson I've ever received in my life. He said, "This is what you're going to play on this song." It was based on 2 chords, sort of like Oye Como Va.
Yeah.
Ding, ding. But Charlie would voice it like Herbie Hancock would voice it. And he goes, "This is what Herbie would do. This is this chord, and this is this chord." And I'm like, okay. But man, I was so nervous. And the bass player, so it was in the key of G. It was just 2 chords, D minor 11 to D minor 13. I didn't even know what that was back then. I was like, whatever, okay. But he told me the names. I'm like, okay. And then as we're counting off the song, the bass player turns to me and he goes, "We changed the key, F sharp." And I'm like, he was messing with me, but it was like, so we played the song and thank God I got through it. And that's when I was like, 16.
Oh my gosh.
So that was sitting with my first professional band, and it was like, once again, sink or swim for me. And after that, every now and then he would see me and call me up, and the confidence would build a little bit more. But during that time, I wanted to go and study music. I would write for the catalogs of Berkeley and MI, and "Mom, I want to come here." But the mentality of especially Latino parents who have seen, and they don't want that for their kids, because usually musicians are looked upon as womanizers or drunkards, or they get into things that they shouldn't. Yeah. So they didn't want that for their kids. So she didn't encourage me to do that at all, and I didn't. And then unfortunately, well, not unfortunately what I'm going to say now, but at the age of 18, 19 is when I really received the Lord at a funeral. And the message really touched my heart. But before then, I started to look into Scripture. My mom would have us, before, even since we were kids, read the Bible every night. That's how we learned how to read and write Spanish, because it was through the Bible. Okay, no, you guys are going to read and write. And we would, all 3 brothers, we would sit down, and she would have us read a passage each, even though we didn't know, but she would help us through it, and the Spanish came through there. And unfortunately, sometimes the pastor in that situation, when legalism sets in, made it very hard to me to continue in music the way I wanted to. Because
in the church,
the pastor at that particular time was very legalistic.
Okay.
And no matter what the subject matter was on Sundays, secular music always came into play, and he would always single me out in front of the congregation.
Wow.
Look at me, or whatever, and really kind of like made my parents so I became stagnant.
Yeah.
The message was, God doesn't care if you're best or whatever. He only cares about your heart. And that is so wrong. That is so wrong. If God gave you a gift, now I know, man, I would say if when I was playing secularly, I gave 100%. Now for the Lord, it's going to be, 200%. I don't see. And the more I studied and saw, that Dave, and it's like, this is not jiving with me. But it was a constant battle until I finally ended up leaving that church.
Yeah.
But I remained stagnant. at the time, and so I did have a Christian band at the time, and I started to think, okay, well, my music thing is over. I'm just gonna play in church now, and so I put a Christian band together called New Creation, and we were one of the that I knew of the what they call the salsa Christian band. I mean, back then, now you have more than one, but back then, people would get up and leave. It was too hip for the sanctuary. Some people loved it, some people didn't. And we played Victory Outreach. The mother church was in La Puente at the time. Okay. And we used to do their 4th of July carnival every year, outdoors with games and stuff. And in 1992, there was a singer that opened up for us. I didn't know who she was or whatever, but I remember it as if it were yesterday. And then we played afterwards. Well, in 1993, I was at Tower Records. And then that was my home away from home. Tower Records for me was like, you go read the credits and spend hours there on the aisle, see what's new. And then I passed through the magazine rack, and one particular magazine struck me. It was a bright yellow cover, and on the picture was a face that I recognized, but I recognized through the news for a story that I remember hearing earlier, much earlier, like in the early 80s. And it was a gentleman by the name, his face I recognized, and I picked up the magazine, and it goes, "The Return of Andrae Crouch."
Wow.
And I started reading the magazine, and he started talking about that he's coming back to music after being out for about more than 10 years, and that he was currently working on an album that was going to be under Quincy Jones' record label, Quest. So I found, okay, let me buy the magazine. Let me take it home and finish reading. So I did that. Maybe about a month later, the phone rings and I pick it up. And I go, "Hello?" He goes, "Hello, can I speak to Alberto Salas?" I go, "This is him." He goes, "Yes, my name is Scott Smith. I'm the producer of Andrae Crouch. I got your information through the church, Victory Outreach. My wife opened up for you guys a year ago, and I called the office, and that's how I got your information. Well, right now, Andrae is working on an album." And I go, "I know this. I read it in an interview. And you know how Andrae loves Latin music, and I loved what I heard at the carnival. Would you be interested in doing an arrangement for the album?" And I had never done an arrangement in my life. I've never studied music. But I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure, because, even though musically I was stagnant, still in my teenage years, I used to go to the Baked Potato in Hollywood. And even though I didn't know the Lord back then, but I would go see Koinonia. And Koinonia was, Abraham, Justo, Alex. And back when I was 14 and 15, I would go to the Potato and see them. And I would be, man, someday I would love to do what they do or play it, because I knew they would do movies and jingles and all this kind of stuff, TV work. Yep. Man. So, getting back to the call from Scott Smith, I was like, man, wow, to do music at this level is going to be awesome. So I go, yeah. He goes, "Okay, come to my house." This was a Wednesday. He called me on a Tuesday. "Come to my house tomorrow, Wednesday, to pick up the demo of what we want to do." And I go, "Okay, yeah, sure." So I go to his house Wednesday. He plays me the song. He goes, "Okay, this is what we need to arrange." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah. Can you do this?" "Oh, yeah. But inside my heart is going to. So I finally got back home at night Wednesday, and I go, "Okay." He goes, "The only thing is you need to have this ready by Friday." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, no problem." So I got all day Thursday to do it. Piece of cake. All right. So Thursday I wake up with the song and say, okay. And at that time I had a workstation which only had 8 tracks. It was a Korg T1. It had a built-in sequencer with eight tracks in it. I go, okay, this would be easy. So I got up bright and early and sat at the piano and, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 p.m., 1 p.m. goals. 8 p.m., 9 p.m., absolutely no ideas whatsoever. I was blocked, bro. I was so frustrated. Finally, 12 midnight hit, and I was burned out. And I go, you know what? I have to be at his house tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon. Nothing's going to, let me just go to sleep. So I remember the prayer I said that night. I go, Lord, this is the desire of my heart. All I ask, please don't let me be embarrassed. And I closed my eyes. Brother, when I awoke, my eyes opened, I looked at the clock, it was exactly 7 a.m. And I had the complete arrangement in my head. I went to my keyboard and in 2 hours programmed arrangement. And I was like, wow, this is cool.
Man.
So, man, got in the shower, got ready, went to his house, had the arrangement, and then I was like, wow, amazing how this happened. I knock, he opens the door, he goes, the very first words out of his mouth, Albert, we got some bad news. I'm like, yeah, what? He goes, I think we're gonna have to do another song. I'm like, brother. I'm like, can you please just do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you please just listen to this and let me know what you think?
Yeah.
So he sat down, went into the studio, he puts it on. Stone face, no reaction whatsoever. And I'm just like looking at him like this. He picks up the phone. He goes, hey, it's me. Listen to this. Played the whole song, stone face. He called his wife, listen to this, and she was like, and I'm like, oh, shoot. And I like, as soon as the song's over, he goes, okay. And I'm like, he goes, that was Andrae. He loved it. We're keeping it.
Oh, man.
I didn't want to go through that again, man. I didn't want to go through that. Lord, please don't let me be embarrassed.
Yeah.
Writer's block, whatever.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing it now in his system, his professional system with his computer and sequencers. Man, and it came out awesome. I mean, better. I mean,
Yeah,
better
yeah.
equipment, the sounds, the samples, everything. It was like, and we finished at about 3:30 in the morning, 4 in the morning. And I was like, man, I drove home and I was like, wow. So, and I had rehearsal with my Christian band the very next morning at 11. So we did the rehearsal. I was a bit tired, but I mean, we did the rehearsal. After rehearsal was done at 2, I go into my room and I see that there's my answering machine. I don't know if you know what that is, but was blinking. And I got a message. I mean, but I was still on cloud 9 from what happened the night before or whatever. So I put the message, and it's the producer. Albert, this is Scott. I don't know what happened, but my system crashed, and all the work we did last night is gone.
Oh, no.
You need to go over here today because Monday we're tracking. Oh, so I run over there. Not this time, naturally, we do it faster because we already know what we're doing.
Exactly.
But there's something about that first, the magic, about the first where it came out good, but the first one was, but I mean, we did it. Okay, we did it. Fine.
Yeah.
Fine. So he goes, well, we're going to track on Monday. I mean, just be at the studio. And now this is being at a professional studio. It's like, wow, okay. So the owner of the studio called O. Henry's, and the owner was a guy who owned all of Frank Sinatra's publishing. So it was a state-of-the-art studio, man. It was one of the, if not the newest at the time. And man, I get there, and when I get there, on percussion, Alex Acuña. On bass is Abraham Laboria. And on horns is Justo. I was like, wow.
That's crazy.
Man. So, man, we did the track, and it came out good. Andrae was happy with it. from there, my parents had a bakery at the time. So my dad and myself were working to lift it up, and my mom was working as in a dental office until the business could give for her to quit that job. And so it was only me and my dad working that. But I asked Scott, the producer, permission, man. Can I come and watch? You know, and they took a liking to me, and he goes, yeah, man, you're welcome here. So they were tracking almost every day, and I asked permission from my parents. Hey, man, hey, man, hey, mom, dad, I've got this opportunity to go see how the big boys do it. I mean, can you guys release me from here to go? And they go, yeah, go ahead. So they gave me permission. So I would go every day, drive up to North Hollywood, and go to Old Henry's, and I would see Paul Jackson Jr. I would see Joe Sample. I would see I would be a fly on the wall. I would get there, sit, notepad, and see how everything was being done. You know, how he would produce the ideas the musicians would come up with, and how he would produce the voices and all that stuff, and I would write. And that was my school. That's how I learned how to produce and stuff. Just from that, one record initially, just being there for 3-4 months, every day. But I wouldn't say a word. Just watch, or write. Okay, this is how it's done. This is what this means. And at the end of the sessions, I would ask the producer for the charts. I would get a copy, and as we're tracking, I would be listening as well. Oh, this is what this means, and that's how I learned how to read music.
Oh, wow.
By listening to them track and seeing, okay, this symbol means this means that. Okay, DC, they went back to the top, so that must mean go back to the top. Okay, they jumped back over here, so DS means take it to the sign, and okay, repeat, and first, second, and third endings. And that's how I learned structure and how to read music. And that was my first big time break.
Yeah.
So we finished it. I mean, the last day was like kind of bittersweet. I mean, I got to experience a dream, go to school and hang out with all these guys. But okay, now the record was done, it's over. Well, if it never happens again, at least I got to, you never know what's going to happen again.
Exactly.
So I was anticipating for the record to come out. So about 3 months later, after my last day at the studio, I rush over. I would, once the record comes out, I rushed over to Tower Records, man. I made a beeline to the gospel section, saw the album, and I picked it up. I went straight to pay for it, went to my car, unwrapped it, and I just wanted to see what. And then I go to the credits, and I go to the song I did, and I was like, wow. I mean, bass, Abraham Laboriel. I mean, piano and rhythm arrangement, Alberto Salas, Alex Acuna, and all these names meet together with him. And I'm like, oh, man, well, if this never happens again, thank you, God, for this opportunity. And at least I got something to show my grandkids. And so that was it. And I never thought of anything again. He did a showcase here, Andrae, in Los Angeles. And the producer called me, hey, Albert, since you were part of the album, we're going to do a showcase. Would you like to come? Yeah, I'd like to come. So I got a suit and my tie, and they had it at SAG in Hollywood. And so, man, I was there sitting, and they did all the songs but mine, because they couldn't play it and stuff. It's a different, unless you're everything. But I understood why they didn't do it, because it's unless you grew up in that, the montunos and the tumbals and the percussion, it's not going to happen. But everything sounded so amazing. So at the end, Sheila E. was there, and I was like, oh man, that's Sheila. So, and a lot of celebrities and stuff. It was like a mini concert that he was, debuting the album. Afterwards, they went to go eat, and hey, Albert, do you want to come with us? I'm like, yeah, okay. So it was just a producer and his wife and a friend of his, and we went to eat at one of these sidewalk cafes in Hollywood. Oh, wow, okay, whatever, And I was talking to his friend, the producer's friend. So he was asking, oh, yeah, well, so, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I was like, well, this, I play a little bit of keyboard, a little bit of drums, a little bit of bass, whatever. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. But the producer, I didn't notice that he was listening in on the conversation. So after we were dismissed from dinner, he says, "Hey Albert, Andre's gonna get a whole new band. How would you like to be the musical director?" Once again, trying to play cool. Oh well, yeah,
Let me think about it.
yeah,
Let me pray on it.
something. I had never played gospel. I mean, I've never been a musical director at that level.
Yeah.
Or played gospel a day in my life. I mean, not traditional gospel. So then he goes, "Okay, you're gonna have to learn how to play like Andre and stuff." And he has a very particular piano style. And so learn this song. So he gave me a song, one of Andre's classics, "Soon and Very Soon." And
That's a great song.
so I was like, okay, I'll learn this. So I only knew one guy who could play gospel, and I met him through the drummer of the garage band that we started.
Yeah.
So he lived in Riverside. So I called him up. "Hey, Zach, I need to learn how to play gospel, and one easy lesson. Give me the basics and stuff." So he goes, "Okay, come back at this time." So we were supposed to meet a Thursday, or was it a Tuesday, like about 2 p.m. Now, I don't know if you've ever been on the Riverside Freeway on the 91.
Oh.
That particular day, I got to his house at 8:30 p.m. and I left at 1. Traffic was that bad, but I needed to get there, and I needed to learn some
Oh,
gospel
my gosh.
quick. And it was like, so I finally get there, we put on the song, and he starts teaching me some stuff, and it's in the key of G flat, all the black keys. And Zach's telling me, I doubt if they replayed it in this key. They probably recorded it in F to make it easier. And I'm like, I don't know about that. And I quickly found out that, gospel music is all the flat keys, G flat, A flat, So he taught it to me in F, but I go, no, I better learn this in G flat. So I learned it, but I went to note for note. I would, okay, this voice and this voice, and I finally got it. But I never had to audition for Andre. I never had to play it for him. He just took a liking to me, and I was his musical director for 4 years, from '94. The record was released in '94, and I was his musical director from '94 through '98.
Wow.
And we traveled the world, all of the United States, Europe, the Caribbean. I mean, it was just a wonderful time. I mean, getting to know the humbleness of Andre and his heart.
Yeah.
I mean, genuine, a heart for the lost, and working with his vocalists. I mean, the cream of the crop, Tata Vega. I mean, Crystal Murden, Linda McCrary. It's like, the ones who do, The Lion King and Michael Jackson's background vocals and Madonna. And it's like, wow, working at that caliber was just like
A dream.
It was a dream of mine to work at that caliber. Because unfortunately, coming from the Latino church, sometimes, the discipline is not as strong as I would hope. Now it's much different than it was back then. But that set a dream in my mind to start my own project one day. One day I want to do the same way that the African Americans, the passion that they put in their music and the excellence.
Yeah.
And our Anglo brothers and sisters put, I want to do something with my heritage at that level. And that was to come, but that's what set the precedence for that, and the desire to do that was my involvement with Andre.
So it completely changed your life, like the way you wanted to do music in general. You like the level.
Well, yeah, I mean, right before I got offered the job with Andre, I go, okay, I did the album. If more work comes from this, let me prepare myself. I had never studied music, and I didn't know. I knew exactly how much I didn't know. Wow. So I applied at USC, and at that time I was accepted into USC. And then right after I got accepted, I got the offer to be the MD for Andre.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, do I go to school and set myself up for the future, whatever that may bring, or do I go on the road now and do what all of these students are studying to hopefully one day do?
Wow.
So I chose Andre and stuff, and yeah, still haven't been to school, but
No, but I've known you for several years, and I mean, anything about Cuban history, Cuban music. If I ever really, really needed help with that, you would probably be the number one guy to reach out to. I mean, you've come in, at the time when I was studying, you came in and taught a couple of lessons for Jimmy, and I think you did one for his ensemble as well. I mean, the fact that you're a multi-instrumentalist, so bongos, congas, piano, helping the students out, it's always a good thing. Being able to teach their part. And I remember you did this one thing which was great. We were in a drum class, and you were subbing in for Jimmy, and Peter Lee was a bass player that day, a Korean guy. So he had his chart set up, and I think you had a bolero. And you give him the chart. He said, "Okay, guys, I want you guys to read this chart, from top to bottom, no mistakes." I think I was on drums. I made a couple mistakes. And Peter is reading the chart, and you look, we start the song, and I think within a minute, you stopped the song. You said, "Is your name Peter?" Like, yes. And, Peter's all excited. He's like, "Okay." He's like, "The note that you're missing right here," he's like, it's a quarter note. And he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Oh no, it was a whole note." And because you wanted him to play the exact phrase on the chart, And he was like, "Okay." And so I had never seen Peter so focused, because he was like, I'm normally used to him just smiling when he plays, like, how, because he's not really, when we play together, we don't really read too many charts. And so, we do a lot of church stuff. So he started focusing on the chart, like, right here, like, with a serious face, and so, like, he'd try and focus, and every time he'd make a mistake, I think he was turning to you. I don't know if you remember that or not. It was a while ago. It was a couple years ago when you came to sub in for Jimmy's class.
I'm 50 now, man. My mind isn't what it used to be. So, no, I do remember.
And that was a great time, And I mean, you were very your approach to teaching, it's not from my perspective, it's not one that is you're better than us, but you're just trying to help us. You're trying to really teach us the right way to do something, and if we're gonna make a mistake, stop and do it again. Adjust what you need to adjust, and run it one more time.
I try. I try. Unfortunately, I never had a mentor. Like I said, mine was sink or swim.
Yeah.
And very rarely, if ever, have I said no to anything. Well, no, I have. I have said no to stuff, but not for musical reasons.
Yeah.
But for musical reasons, if I think I can do it, I'll challenge myself.
Yeah.
And, you guys have it easy now with the, Google and the YouTube. But back in 93, 94.
That wasn't it.
Even to this day, because I didn't go to school, some days, I'm asked to do stuff. Certain stuff that I haven't done orchestration-wise or whatever. But I'll learn how at 3, 4 in the morning when everyone else is asleep. I gotta have this by tomorrow or in 2 days. But so I try to make it easy. And I tell my students, I've been teaching at Musicians Institute now for about 5 years. Yeah, 5 years. And I try to tell them, I'm going to try to make it as easy for you so you don't have to go through what I had and still have to go through at times. So take advantage of it. Right. I mean, and if there are no shortcuts or magic pills to take that are going to speed the process, the only way to do it is to do it. I mean, you just got to, discipline. Right. And do it.
Stay committed and that makes sense. So Albert, what about faith in music? Mm-hmm. How have you balanced that in your career, as far as working for an artist? When do you choose to say no? Is it for ethical reasons, moral reasons, or when do you say yes to gigs opportunities that you get?
Well, first and foremost, above anything, I am a Christian first. Before music, unfortunately, I see in our business, people treat you according to what you can do for them and stuff. And that is just so sad. I mean, it's very rare that you'll have someone just call you, just say, hey, how are you doing? Not, hey, what are you up to? It's, get me on it, or, you know. So it's a very, you know, me business. And friends are very, true friends are very few and far in between. But my thing has always been it, treat everybody with human respect and dignity, regardless of their faith, color, creed, or whatever. Treat them as you would like to be treated, first and foremost, not because of their talent, how good or how bad they are even, you know. No one was born knowing everything. You know, it's a process. And the rise, as quickly as it came, can come back down. So, and you never know whose helping hand you're going to need. So don't step on anybody. I mean, just treat everybody as if we were in heaven. It's not going to matter, you know, how much chops you have or how much musical knowledge you have or how bad you are or who you're even playing with or who you've played with or whatever. It's you know, treat everyone cool. Everybody, regardless of how good they are, who they know, who they don't know, how bad they are. Treat them all with human dignity and respect. And that's been my philosophy. That's what I always try to do, first and foremost. Now, God gives everybody, in my opinion, well, the word says that, different gifts. And we are the salt of the earth. Salt is a preservative, you know, that they use to preserve meat, something that's rotting. And we're supposed to shine our lights. Now, that's what God has called me to do. You know, I've tried to get out many times. You know, so you become just burdened with the same hustle and bustle and the attitudes and the politics and stuff. But for some reason, God still has me here and stuff. Now, that may not be your calling or somebody else's calling. Someone may be called to be a light to those in the church, others to those outside of the church. And it all depends on what he has gifted you to do. And what also, there's a lot of, in our industry, there's a lot of temptations with anything imaginable, be it with substance abuse, with alcohol, with women, pornography, whatever. So if you're not strong enough, and you just have to be honest with yourself, you know, is it really worth it losing to gain this? But you know, the fame and the money do not bring happiness. You know, I can attest to that. You know, once you've done what you've done, and it's like, okay, now what? You know, it's like, you know, when I played with we did the Santana thing. I remember the first time, my very first concert, my father took me to see Santana at the Greek Theater. I was 13 years old. It was either go to grad night for junior high or go see Santana. I mean, let's go see Santana.
No question.
And it was like, he took my older brother and myself, and that was my first concert. And I remember saying, you know, one of these days I'm going to play with that guy. You know, I had the desire to be a professional musician since I was 6. I've never thought about doing anything else but doing music. Forward 98, 99, when we did the Supernatural album. And then after we did the album, we did the first annual Latin Grammys and the Tonight Show. But I remember after the Grammys, man, it was as soon as we set up and then the walls come down and I could see Celia and Emilio and everybody. And it's like, I'm starting off the song and just saying, don't mess up. Don't mess up. Because the tumbao starts it off.
Yeah.
If you hit a wrong note,
Yeah.
the guitar, the bass, or the drum are not going to hide it. So play it perfectly. But after we finished, I mean, it was okay. It was great. We did it. And I remember telling myself, you know, okay, now what? Now what? If I wouldn't have God in my life and knowing that that's the ultimate goal, that's the ultimate peace, you know, it would have been kind of disappointing. Okay, I did it. Now what? Instead of saying, okay, thank you, Lord, for giving me that desire of my heart that I had when I was 13. Okay. But when you put stuff in perspective, I mean, you got to look at an eternal perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great, good and fine, but, okay. Time changes, things move on, and the world changes, attitude changes and stuff, but, God still stays the same. So let's persevere to keep on that walk and stuff. So that's my perspective of faith and doing what I do. Always be a light. Always do your best, regardless. I mean, because the giver of the talent is God, and first and foremost, you dedicate it to Him. I mean, there's going to be people who are going to want to cheat you out of your what is rightfully yours, the work you've done for them. They don't want to pay you. Or whatever, but that shouldn't, according to how much you get paid, how much effort you're going to put into what you're doing.
Yeah.
No. First and foremost, you do everything unto God. I mean, my greatest musical experiences, or more satisfying musical experiences, is when I've played for an audience of one in my studio by myself, and I turn off the lights and I just play, and I know He's there. And I just play for Him, not the Grammys or not touring the world. That's all good and beautiful. You see that, you try to see the positive. You're getting to see the world on someone else's dime. You don't have to pay for it, and beautiful, great, thank you, Lord. But I mean, nothing has fulfilled when you're in the studio and just playing just for Him. So you got to have that attitude all the time. Do your best, because ultimately you are playing for Him. He's the giver of the gift.
Yeah.
And the same way He gave it, I mean, don't want to say this, but I mean, He can decide to take it away or what.
Yeah.
So, that's been my attitude since day one, and still remains. I mean, I'm grateful that it still remains, because being in this business and dealing with people that you have to deal with, sometimes it can really try your patience.
Yeah.
And you ask yourself, why are you doing this for? Why? How many lashes are you still continuing to take? There's a Spanish saying that says, my mom says it all the time, el burro no era malo, lo hicieron, which translates to English, which means el burro no era malo, which in English means that the mule or the work mule, he didn't start off being bad, but by taking so many lashes, he became bad and stuff, and that's very easy to do. In the music business, in the secular music business, not even in the secular music business, in the gospel music business, which I hate to use those three words in the same sentence. But even then, you'd want to sometimes throw up your hands and say, if not for the Lord, man. Sometimes you want to go, pardon the adjective, but you want to go postal on people and stuff. But you want to edit that out. Yeah. But it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
Man. It's the truth.
And now you have a wife and 2 kids.
Wife and 2 kids. And one thing I learned recently is never put them aside for work.
I was gonna ask you about balancing your work.
Sometimes work is so plentiful that kids. I can't see you guys today. I was involved in a project which you brought up before you started rolling the cameras, and I was working literally 5 months. Going to the studio, driving back to my house at 7, sleeping for 2 hours, getting up, taking another shower, going back to the studio for 5 months. And the payback from the people I was doing this was just didn't go. I mean, they really turned their backs on me. Wow. And it was like, and I gave them 5 months. I put them in front of my wife and kids. I will never do that again. Never. It was a valuable lesson. But I would never. You can't get that time back. and 5 months in kid years.
Yeah.
I mean, when did you get that big? I mean, when did your face start changing like that?
Yeah.
You know, so never. It is never advisable. You know, God first, family,
Yeah.
everything else, and God will make a way. God, we all have the same, 24 hours to work with, and stuff. So it's like, but family should always come before work. Always, always. I made the mistake last year of for those 5 months of not adhering to what I already knew to be true.
Yeah.
But
I'm assuming it was a big deal, right, for you to dedicate that much time and that much effort.
it was a very big project.
Yeah.
Something that I had never done before. And I was doing everything from arranging to teaching the material to being the rehearsal pianist to doing all the editing on the charts.
Wow.
They wanted changes, so I would be up at 3, 4 in the morning editing the charts by hand, sending them. Working with big people.
Yeah.
In this particular industry, and sequencing, being the engineer.
Oh my gosh.
It was just like extremely a lot of work for one person.
Yeah.
And but what came out of it, something I've always confidence is something that we don't always have and stuff. And from my point of view, the confidence is because when you're working with people like well-schooled people and it's like you know exactly, wow, I didn't go to school. Oh man, the confidence shrinks and stuff. But the older you get and the good job that you do, and so that starts building confidence and stuff. So I advise also everyone to believe in yourself. If God called you to do it, sometimes it's like my wife and my mom. To them, I'm the greatest ever, and I know I'm like, please, but I wish I had the same confidence they have in me, in myself.
Right.
But the difference between all these great players that we've talked about earlier and stuff is they believe in themselves. They have confidence. They make a mistake, but they know how to make it, and they keep on going. And unless nobody will know.
Yeah.
Because they, even the best make mistakes, but they know how to make them and how to come out of them.
Yeah.
So you just got to have that confidence. That comes from experiences, getting yourself in situations where you're playing with these great players and sink or swim and following the course, make a right. Oh, I should have made a left, but okay, next time I know. I just took a different route. But so yeah.
And what about advice for young and upcoming musicians? People, young kids that are. I call them young kids, but they're not really young. But I'd say like 15, 16-year-olds that are trying to get into music, want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
What advice do you have for them as a musician, and all your experiences combined? And
as a musician, nowadays we have the tools. Like I said, when I was growing up, we didn't have YouTube and the Look at Me, social media outlets that we have. That's all good and fine. That's great. Now, if you don't learn, it's because you don't want to. Because we have at our fingertips now capabilities and tools to learn. The thing on the other side of the coin is to differentiate between that is good, like the Apostle Paul. I absorb everything, but I know how to separate the good from the bad. And stuff, and that comes with experience. Now, learn the traditions of what you're studying. Basically, if you want to become a Cuban musician, great. But Cuban music is not all there is. Learn as much as you can. Learn jazz, learn pop, learn funk, and learn the history. Learn of the forefathers that came before. How this stuff was invented, why it was invented, why did they play this way. Also the social aspects of what was happening during the time. What caused them to form these styles and play them this particular way, and then learn the new stuff. Most of the younger generations, especially in percussion, they all want to be Machine Gun Kellys.
Chops, the guy with chops.
Yeah, the chops. Nothing bad with that. That's all good and fine. But the most important thing is groove. what's going to get, like Steve Gadd says, fills bring the thrills, but groove pays the bills.
That's good.
And so it's like, be able to not only make the music that you like, and this goes to any instrument you play, be it keyboards, bass, guitar, drums, whatever. If you like something, you're going to make it sound good. But a key object is to also make stuff that you don't like sound just as good. Because that's, you want to be a gospel drummer. But hey, McBride is hiring, and her gig is paying $4 or $5 a week. You better play that country stuff. I'll play. You show up with a straw and your hat tilted, and you play that. So it's not just about, unless you're going to be the best in the world at Cuban or jazz or fusion or whatever, and you're going to be working just on that. But also listen and practice to what you don't like, and make that sound just as good as what you do like. Yeah. That's good. Musically speaking, that would be my advice. Also, have something to fall back on. I mean, musically, as a business, we're changing. We're evolving. We have been doing so for several years now. I mean, back in the 90s, man, work was so plentiful. Studios, still recordings. Now that's not the deal. Now we constantly have to reinvent ourselves, how marketing is done, and learn that aspect of it as well. Have something else to fall back on. If you're going to go to university, you want to major in music, okay, minor in something else. Or major in something else, minor in music.
Right.
So that would also be my advice.
Cool.
Yeah.
And just to kind of wrap up, any last words of advice? I know you gave advice for the up and coming musicians, but anything else that you want to say that we haven't covered today?
Money is not the end all. Always do music for why you first got into it. Because for those of us who know the Lord, because we recognize it was a gift from Him, and we do it for Him first and foremost. For those who don't know the Lord yet, because it's a creative pastime, it fills you in some way that you may not recognize, but it's a spiritual gift. Always try to do your best, regardless of the situation. If you want to get a break, like what happened to me, my case is different. My case was word of mouth. And when I played at that carnival, if I was it's just a church carnival, whatever, whatever, just do whatever. But you never know who's looking. Yeah. Andrae Crouch's producer was looking at me a year before he called me, and he didn't forget it. So you never know who's going to be there, who's going to be looking. That may be a big break for you. So always do your best. Money is not the reason why you should be doing this. Money is a result. And also learn the business ethics as well, because when you start getting to the money, there's people who know more than you do, and will try to take advantage of that. Right. I don't care who they are or what industry they are. When money is involved, so in order to not go through certain heartaches and learning curves, learn the business as well. Because if you're going to get into music full time, they call it the music business for a reason. And those who know that aspect really further a lot quicker than those who are just talented and are waiting for their big break. Learn your instrument, learn how to promote yourself, what makes the business work, how it's working nowadays. It's not what it was 20 years ago. It's not what it was 10 years ago. So keep evolving with it, rolling with the punches, and working at it. And for those of you who are single, if you don't have a girlfriend, if you're not married or engaged, your time is your own. If you want, you have all 24 hours in the day to practice if you choose not to sleep. But once you start getting a girlfriend or boyfriend and to get engaged in family, like I said, you have to put family first if it's going to work.
Yeah.
And so take advantage of the time you have now, because once those other responsibilities start coming in, you're going to say, I wish,
And that, yeah.
do all the practicing, all the studying that you can now, and buy all the gear that you can now, because once that money, once you're married and have a family, that money has to go for, clothes, shelter, food, rent. So, there's a lot of different variables, but life happens, but take advantage of the time. It doesn't come back. I mean, once you let it slip away, use your time wisely. Once the day is gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
And when you practice, when you're studying something, try to remain positive. I hear so many students use these two phrases. I can't, and it's too hard. Well, now I'm not preaching or teaching positive thinking or psychology here, but if you verbalize, or even if not, if you tell yourself internally, I can't, guess what? Your brain's going to tell your body, you know what, you probably can't. Or it's too hard. I mean, then it's going to be too hard. Just, instead, tell yourself, you know what, I can't today, but tomorrow I'll be able to do, maybe if it's an extra bar or an extra note that I couldn't do yesterday. And or maybe next week I'll finally have this. It's too hard, right now, but this is my goal. This is what I'm going to get to. So it's just going to, you got to take things in gradients. It's like getting to a second floor. How do you get to the second floor if there's no elevator? You take steps. One step at a time. It's the same thing. Yeah. It's like learning a language. First you learn a certain limited vocabulary, and your vocabulary expands. Yeah. And your speed gets better the more you do something.
Right, more fluent,
Yeah, so the same in music. Music is a language, and the same as you learn a language, whether it be English, Spanish, or whatever. Take it in the same, remain positive. Yeah. Remain positive. I mean, try not to frustrate yourself with if something is not coming out. Okay, it's not going to come out today. Tomorrow we'll get a little better, and the next day. But dedication and persistence is the key. Yeah. And you'll see, and a couple of years from now you'll laugh. Oh, I remember when I couldn't do that.
And now you can do it in your sleep.
Yeah, left-handed. Switch or whatever. But try to remain positive.
Albert, thank you for being here and dedicating time, to coming out and doing this with me. I think I told you this before. It must have been, it was maybe at my graduation when you came. But now that I'm thinking about it, there was one moment where I was practicing in the garage. I was practicing drums. I was on a groove percussion kit, blue one. My dad had bought it for me for Christmas, as a Christmas gift. And I remember that he heard me practicing to a song, a particular song. I remember it. And I was, trying to groove with it. And it was Corazón Espinado by Santana. And this is maybe, I was like, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old. I can't remember. I can't remember too much. I was practicing the drums, and my dad heard this loud song coming from the garage, and I finished the song, and he goes, Kevin, come here. I'm like, okay. I thought he was gonna be all excited, and he's like, come inside. I'm like, okay, Dad, what's up? And he's like, what are you playing? I said, Dad, I'm playing drums. He's like, no, I know you're playing drums. He's like, but what are you playing? And I said, I'm playing a song by Santana called Corazón Espinado. And he says, why? I said, Dad, because I like the song. And I remember at that time, we also grew up in a legalistic type of church. So anything besides worship and Christian music was of the devil. You shouldn't listen to it because it's not good for you. All these things. So he told me, this is the last time that I want to hear you playing any song that does not involve the Lord. That's what he told me. I was a young kid. I said, Dad, but I like this song. I like the piano player. You know, like the group. You know, I grew up with salsa music. You know, my dad playing that all his life. You know, that's just what it was. And so, fast forwarding to 2009 when we first met. You know, I after that day I went home and I said, Dad, guess what? You know, and this is already now transition. We moved to the Inland Empire, and so we left the church we were at, and my dad finally saw that, you know, even though I was into secular music, I wasn't just into Christian music my whole life. He told me, you know, that he was okay with me doing music at you know, not just in the church, not just within the four walls. He said, you know, I trust you because I built that trust with him. You know, I never drank, I never partied, I never did drugs and all that stuff. He never caught me lying to him. So that helped that to get going, you know. So when I told him, Dad, I want to do music at a professional level, I want to play out, but that also means that I'm not just going to be in church, you know. And so I remember I told him, Dad, guess who I met today? He said, you know, and he goes, who'd you meet? And I'm like, Alberto Salas. He's like, who's that? I'm like, Dad, that's the piano player on the Supernatural album, Corazón Espinado, you know? And he's like, and I reminded him of that exact same story. And he apologized to me later for, you know, kind of not discouraging me from playing drums, just from discouraging me from playing secular music, you know? And so and then come to 2014, this is when I remember you told me about the opportunity to study at a school, and they were handing out scholarships, you know. And I want to thank you, you know, because you were one of the main reasons why I decided to go to school to study, you know, with these amazing musicians, instructors that, you know, were there at the time. You know, had it not been for you, I think, not that there's anything bad with just playing at church, but I feel like there was bigger opportunities that are not just in the church, you know. And I see that you yourself and other musicians that I know have worked in the industry, and it's like, you know, they don't just play at church, they're believers as well, and they uphold their testimony, you know, and their characters is great, they have integrity, you know, but they're out there in the grapevine, you know, they're trying to be a light, like we were talking about, you know, salt to people that need it, you know, people that are desperate for an answer. And sometimes we're those people. You know, we don't have to shove the Bible down their throats, but at least we're walking testimonies, you know, and we could share our stories with them.
Sure.
You know, so I want to thank you, you know, publicly for being the one that really encouraged me to study music at a professional level and go to school. And, you know, so it's a great honor to have you here, man.
Oh, man.
I appreciate you being here. It means a lot.
Just thank God that opportunity was brought to my ears, and the first one I thought about was you.
Thank you, man.
I go, if anyone deserves this opportunity, it's Kevin. Let's hope the Lord opens his doors. And
you remember that conversation we had through Messenger?
I do. When you also you called me and said, well, I don't know, and I'm like, boy, if you don't, no, but yeah, like I said, I try to do what I didn't have anybody, since my parents weren't musicians. They didn't know how to guide me and stuff. Their viewpoint of musicians was totally something different. So I just try to help out or make the road easier for the up and coming talent and stuff, if it's within my power to do so. Just so they don't go and learn, you know, through the school of hard knocks necessarily, because they're gonna have, you probably have already had certain hard knocks, you know, and other stuff that I couldn't help you with. But if you can make someone's life easier, why not? Yeah. Why not? I mean, it's not you know, I had to learn the hard way, so let them too. No, no. I mean, they'll have their own difficulties, and the Lord will bless you for it. I mean, it's like you try to make, as I said before, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and stuff. And that goes with every situation in life and stuff. So I'm glad that worked out for you. You know, something that I wasn't able to do, you were able to do. So awesome. You know, hopefully, well, I'm not dead yet, so hopefully sometime.
Yeah, don't die anytime soon, man. Come on, man.
Well, you know, if I do, to die is to gain, and absent from the body is present with the Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Where's the B3, bro? But Thank you, man.
Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the 4th episode of Sir Kevin Says. Alberto Salas, once again, appreciate him coming out.
My pleasure.
Stay tuned for some more stuff coming in the future, and catch you guys next time.
God bless.
God bless. Thank you guys for checking out episode number 4. You've made it through the whole month. Once again, congratulations. For those of you that have joined me for the very first time, I invite you guys to subscribe down below. Remember, this is also an audio podcast that is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So you can check that out anytime that you'd like. If you're on your way to work or coming home from work or stuck in traffic and you don't want to do the illegal thing of holding your phone and watching the YouTube video, you can check it out on those audio podcasts. I think that's about it. So we'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys for joining. Peace out.